Hello, and welcome to the final episode of this month's Halloween special. This is the finale, and so it may be a little longer. These stories contain some pretty intense moments and characters, a strong indication to some ghosts being mischievous, threatening, and able to make contact with the living. I do actually want to start by saying a big thank you to all those who have watched and listened, liked and subscribed. The same goes for viewers and subscribers to come, who may be watching this in the future. 6 weeks ago, I started my YouTube journey, and so far have been really enjoying it. It has been giving me so much motivation, inspiration, and a true creative output. I struggle with my mental health just like most of us on this planet, and being creative is so grounding and refreshing to me. It helps me process, relax, and express. So please stay tuned for more videos to come. I will carry on with my makeup, no doubt. However, I am a complex human being with many ideas. I have a short film coming soon that I will most likely start my November videos off with. In the meantime, my spooky story playlist will be in the description as well as my Instagram. Thank you again, everyone. Now let's get into the spooky stories. Sit back, relax, if you can, and let's begin. Story number 1. What I'm about to tell you is something that happened 12 years ago. It was New Year's Eve and I was at a house party in Wales where I was living at the time. I was with my girlfriend and the house was huge with strange furniture. The bloke who owned the house had antiques and artifacts from all over the world. The house was like a museum. Also, this guy who owned the house was into the occult. Anyway, my girlfriend and I were standing beside each other, looking out of a window at the view, when suddenly I felt this force come up behind me and shout in my ear, "Who are you? Get out!" I looked at my girlfriend, but she was totally unaware. I turned around and walked out of the room in total shock. I asked a lady at the party who knew the house owner's wife what on earth had happened. Then she told me it was a bloke called Godfrey. Earlier in that year, he walked into his garden with a First World revolver and shot himself in the head. In horror, I described what I had seen and felt, the size, the energy, the overall feeling of the apparition, and was told he was exactly that description. A very arrogant alpha male type. He was a very dark character. She told me other men had seen him, but no women had. Basically, he didn't want me in the house. He stood up behind me. It was so real, and it was so fast. It was powerful and dark. A moment I will never forget. Story number 2. I went to visit my partner at their flat in January of this year and decided to dress up a bit. I'm not one to usually wear a dress, but that day I wanted to really dress up. A little red dress, knee-high leather boots, and most importantly, fishnet tights. After arriving at my partner's house, we were laying on the floor of the bedroom. I was lying on my front and had my head resting on their chest when I felt something stroke the back of my leg, and it made me jump and turn around. Nothing was there, and I felt down and around my leg, but there was nothing. I had startled my partner, who asked what the matter was, so I told her I felt something. They got really creeped out by the idea, so I said it was probably nothing and not to worry as I placed my head back down on their chest. Seconds later, I felt it again, only much harder on the back of my thigh and running down towards my knee. I jumped twice as hard as the first time and sat up, staring in the direction it came from, and said in a calm tone, "I don't mean you any harm. I don't want any trouble, but please can you stop stroking my legs as I feel uncomfortable." I slowly reverted back to my original position to find my partner looking very confused and creeped out. It didn't happen again after that, though. Story number 3. We moved into our new house. It was a 200-plus-year-old house in an old wool town and had been a loving family home before we moved in. Although small, it was cozy and just what we needed for the time being. Initially, we didn't have any issues. We loved the house and it felt like home really very quickly. The first few months were great. We were happy and just loving life. One evening, we were all in the kitchen, cooking. The animals were cuddled up by the fire, and everyone was accounted for. Suddenly, we heard a flick and a ping, and we all turned to see a 2p coin hit the wall at the bottom of the stairs. Assuming it was one of our kittens, my stepson went upstairs only to say none of them were up there. We went to the living room, and sure enough, all of the animals were cuddled up together. Something had thrown that coin, and hard as well. For us all to have heard it being pinged, and for it to have been thrown with enough force for it to hit the wall. We laughed it off, but it did shake us up. A few days later, I was washing my hair in the bathroom with the door open, as I was in a rush. My stepson had been sneaking into my office, and I had told him not to go in there anymore because it had my work equipment in there. Whilst washing my hair, I saw him swinging on the door frame before going into my office. I quickly shouted his name and stopped washing my hair, wrapping it in a towel and following him into the now open room. Only no one was in there. I checked the whole room, called out his name, but nothing. And checked our bedroom, his bedroom, only for him and his dad to walk into the house. They'd been at the shops. He hadn't been in the house for at least 10 minutes. I quietly told his dad about what happened later on, out of earshot. He told me I was being dramatic and it was probably one of the cats. I had seen a boy, a small blonde boy, like my stepson. I would have put money on it being him. I was getting scared. I stopped being in the house by myself, freaking myself out at every noise having seen the little boy. I spoke to a friend of mine who advised it was probably just a lonely ghost wanting to play, especially when there is a child in the house. We didn't tell my stepson. We didn't want to freak him out, but I was alone in my fear for a while, until one afternoon, I came home to my husband on the sofa looking concerned. I wasn't going to say anything, he said, but I think you're right about there being ghosts here. He explained he had shut my office door and ensured it was shut because his son was over. He went upstairs to find it open. All the windows were shut. His son had been downstairs the whole time and the animals were sleeping around the house. He shut the door again, only to come up a while later to find it open. Again. No one had been upstairs. 3 times this happened, to the point he just decided to leave it. Someone obviously wanted it to remain open. A few weeks later, we were in bed going to sleep. It was really late and we were just drifting off when we heard loud, intense crying from my stepson's room. "Daddy! Daddy! Daddy!" Over and over, really loud. We both jumped out of bed to get to him, flinging his door open to see an empty bed. We didn't have his son that night. He was at his mum's house. We both freaked out. We had both heard it. Even the dog had heard it. But he wasn't in the house. I had to sleep with the light on for a long time. I was really scared and again, couldn't be in the house alone. Little things kept happening, stuff being moved, doors being opened, hearing giggling and slamming of doors. One afternoon, my husband and his son were having a disagreement about bedtime when the attic hatch suddenly slammed down. It had never done that before or since. Both of them were freaked out. I had nightmares every night. I couldn't be alone. Lights were on all the time, curtains drawn so there was no reflections. It was actually very stressful, thinking and feeling something watching you. In the end, we had to move anyway, and I didn't truly know how stressed I was until we left. Whatever was in our house wasn't malicious. It was just lonely, but it really shook us up and made us worry for months. The house is being converted now, changed and upgraded. I hope whoever is in there is happy and isn't lonely. But honestly, I'm not sure what was really with us in that house, and I really don't want to know. Story number 4. Me and my partner used to take our dog for walks in a place round where we live. Essentially, it was a nice little park and lake just outside of town. There are little pathways that lead around the lake and little picnic areas too. There is a path that takes you away from the popular areas as it leads through a little field with cows and then to a foresty area. Anyway, we were enjoying our day. It was really sunny and warm. I think it was late springtime. We took the path that goes through the trees and then it loops back round to the recreational areas. It was really very pleasant. You could hear birds chirping and families picnicking, dogs playing and the wind softly blowing. It was just a gentle breeze, but you could hear it rustling through the trees, and it was wonderful. Anyway, as we walked deeper into the wooded area, we noticed a man walking through the bushes and trees. Nothing too weird, as lots of dog walkers walk far into the woods, but he was wearing a black hoodie, black joggers and dark shoes. He was huge, like he must have been 6'7" or 8, and he was broad too. He was just walking through the bush, weirdly might I add, like he was swaying and kind of clumsy. But he never tripped or faltered. He had dirty blonde shaggy hair. He had a bit of a dim smile on his face, like he was a bit dazed. I thought, maybe he's just a stoner, and he's looking for his dog or something. So we walked on, but my partner and dog were visibly shaken. They both walked ahead, which is weird, as my dog normally stays with me. I looked back and saw this man still wandering through the bushes, but he didn't have a dog. Not one that I could see. Around this time, I noticed that I couldn't hear people or birds anymore. It was dead silent, apart from the breeze. It was really sunny, but it didn't seem bright. I started to sketch out, but I just thought, it's hazy and people are going home or something. My partner and dog were only a few paces ahead of me now, and we were entering the main path again. On either side, there were tall, thick bushes, and the path wound round in a wide curve. I looked behind me, and this giant, stumbling man with a dim smile upon his face was following us. Quite far behind, walking slowly, so I thought nothing of it. It was still really silent, and I just about caught up with the boys when I decided to check behind me again, and this man was much closer. But I could see he wasn't moving quickly, so I was confused how he had caught up so fast. I started to really freak out, so told my partner to give me the keys. If he started anything, I would smash him in the face with the keys between my fingers. I had them ready in my pocket. I turned around again, and in the 2 or 3 seconds that I had looked away from him, he had basically caught up to us. Maybe 10 paces behind me now. I started to speed up, and turned around again, and now he was so close. So facing forward once more, I plucked up the courage and turned around ready to do something. But this time, there was nobody there. I stopped and looked around. There was no sound of bushes being trampled on, or him running. He couldn't have run back the way he came, as it was a long path and I would have still seen him. So I turned to my partner and realized I could hear everything again. It was so weird, like nothing had happened. My partner was so scared that he wanted to go home, which we did. A couple nights after, I woke up in the middle of the night and jumped so hard because the same man was standing over our bed. Like he was bent over us, examining us. I jumped up and punched, but there was nobody there. Our flat felt so weird for months afterwards. Like, not completely right. I did some research, and a few people have died in that park in the past few years, but none of them matched the guy we saw. My partner denies that he thought it was a ghost or an apparition, but I know it scared him, and he can't explain it. My mum was convinced that it was a lost soul, looking for guidance, but we never saw him again. My partner still refuses to go to that place. So, what do you think about these spirits? The angry male ghost who yelled, "Get out!" The touchy-feely ghost stroking the leg? The little child ghost swinging on the doorframe? And the dazed giant man stumbling through the woods? In the last story, me and the story provider discussed that maybe this ghost died in the 90s. He had that kind of 90s style, and maybe he died from a drug overdose, which points to why he was stumbling around with a dazed look upon his face. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you to everyone who has given me a story. I truly appreciate it, and I wouldn't have been able to make these videos without you. As corny as it sounds, it's true. And I know that sounds corny too, but it's still true. Also, thank you again for watching. Stay tuned for more content to come. Like and subscribe. Sleep tight. And happy Halloween, of course.